everybody, it's Kyla at the MJC again, and I'm here to walk you guys through the child support and other financial sections of the modification motion. But before I get going, as always, I just want to remind you guys that nothing in these videos is intended to be legal advice. It's a video, so I'm not able to analyze your specific situation, to talk through whether a modification is the right form for you, whether a court is likely to grant whatever it is you're asking for in your modification, or to tell you whether what you're asking for is in your best interest. So, if you have any of those sorts of questions, we would definitely recommend that you get some brief legal advice or legal advice from an attorney. There are attorneys available for brief legal advice through the Marquette Volunteer Legal Clinics here in Milwaukee. If you are not in Milwaukee County, you would want to contact your clerk of court to find out what resources are available in your county for people who are representing themselves. All right, let's hop into the form here. So we are on the child support section of the form, which is down, it's on the midway through the second page here. And we'll just go ahead, and if child support is what you want to talk about, you check C. And child support is broken into sort of two pieces. The first piece is what your child support order currently is, and then the second piece is where we'll talk about what it is you want it to be. So here, those of you who've been following this whole video series know that we have John Smith and Jane Doe are our sample people here. And in our current situation, John pays Jane $340 per month. And so here again, just the amount that you currently pay and then per time period. If you don't have that information, you can find it in your most recent court order. It'll tell you how much you're supposed to pay. Typically we do this per week or per month. And you'll also want to indicate whether or not there was a deviation for health insurance. And so deviation is just a fancy lawyer word for, did the court do something different than just the normal standard traditional number, or did they just go with that normal traditional number? The most common reason they deviate, and you can see the deviation for health insurance is here, is health insurance. So what they might do is say that I can pay a little bit less in child support because I am keeping my kids on my health insurance and paying for that. Or maybe I'll pay a little bit more for health insurance I'll pay a little bit more for child support if the other person is paying for health insurance and I'm not. So if your case deviated, it would say so in your most recent order, and you'd probably remember it. Usually if there's a deviation, there would have been some sort of discussion at your last hearing. But if you're not sure, always go back and you can refer to that court order. For most people that we see in the Justice Center, there isn't a deviation for health insurance. Either the children aren't on private insurance or it just wasn't something that the parties wanted to do at the time. So that's the most common thing we see. So then after you've put in, and I guess I should note, if yours is one where there's a deviation, you would check B for the deviation. You would put how much it varied. So if in our situation, John was supposed to pay $400, but they gave him a discount of $60 because he's paying for health insurance, we'd say $60 downward. So it was supposed to be $400, but the court gave him a $60 discount. Similarly, if he was supposed to pay, let's say he was supposed to pay $280, but the court decided he should pay $60 more, then you would check upward. So that's how you're going to do it if you end up filling out that deviation section. So now section 2 for the child support section, this is where we'll tell the court basically what we're asking for them to do to the order, how we want them to change it. So here, a new amount beginning, this line wants a date. So at the MJC, we put the first of the next month there because it wants the date going forward that this change will become effective. So you might put, if your child is going to turn 18 soon, maybe you'll put the day the child turns 18, or sort of whenever you want that change to begin. Keeping in mind that here in Milwaukee, at least, you may not be into court for a few months, and so the court doesn't have to backdate to this day. We can ask for it, but they may not be able to do that. Here we're going to say in the new amount who we want to pay and who we want to receive the payment. So typically we're going to put whoever pays this number is going to be who's paying this number, and to Jane Doe. And that's true even if our ultimate goal was to end up with Jane paying John. We would still typically put this here and use it to set John's payment to 0 and then use an additional other section to set up the payment from Jane to John. But for a lot of people, they're just wanting to change the payment from the person who pays anyway. So like John might just want to change his payment. So from Jane to John, and again, I told you the spacing on these new forms is very strange, so we've got this weird box here. But anyway, these three options here are the three things you could be asking to change it to. A is if you just want the court to recalculate your support based on the child support standards. So if John got a different job and he's making maybe less money now and he just wants the court to recalculate his child support based on his new income, he would check A. If you have a specific amount in mind, a specific amount other than 0 in mind, you would use B. So maybe John, has decided that he, based on what's happening, thinks he can only pay $200 per month. And so that's what he wants to ask for. And I always tell people you can ask for whatever you want in that line, but the court will obviously check it for reasonableness. I can ask for $1 million a month from my ex, but the court may not order them to actually pay me $1 million a month. Or the last one, C, is held open. So held open means that there's going to be no payment right now. Held open, again, is fancy lawyer language for 0. And so we'll say in our situation, John does want it to be held open. And so then down here, this section is talking about, is the new amount going to deviate for health insurance? So up here we talked about, was the amount going to deviate for health insurance? Down here you'll also talk about whether the new amount you're proposing is going to deviate for health insurance. So one is if you're saying no health insurance deviation. So that's if you want it to be none. For some people, let's say you pay for the child's health insurance, you might say, well, yeah, I want the other person to pay a little less or a little more. So that would go under 2 if you're wanting to deviate for health insurance. So in our situation, this wouldn't happen if it's held open, but let's say John just wants to recalculate. Then you'd put a deviation of how much. So, if John is saying, well, I pay $100 for health insurance, so I want a $50 discount on my child support, we would do it like that, $50 less. Or maybe if we had Jane filling this out, or if John just knows Jane pays for the health insurance and he wants to be a good guy and he wants to pay his $50 toward the health insurance, then it could be upward. So that's the child support section in a nutshell. There are 2 other financial sections that you may end up working on in your stipulation. D is for maintenance. Remember, maintenance is spousal support. So if your case isn't a divorce case, then you won't have maintenance in your case. But if you're wanting to change maintenance, you check D. You would go here, that is currently, you're going to put again what it is currently ordered, because just like the child support section, we start with what it is and then we'll go to what we want it to be. So maybe maintenance was ordered at $300 per month. And then you have 2 choices for maintenance as well. Number 1 is if you just want the court to figure out what is a fair new maintenance payment based on the current income. So if you're changing it based on income and you just want the court to figure out what is a fair payment, you check 1. Again, beginning, it wants us to put a date, and we usually put the first of the next month here at the MJC. And then that's all you have to do for that line. Or, just like with the child support section, just like with the child support section, you can also say that you have a specific number you'd like to propose. So maybe John is proposing that he pay $150 per month in maintenance. And then again, you put beginning. We usually put the first of the next month. So it could look like that for the maintenance section. And last but not least, we have the arrears payment section. And again, you don't have to do all of these. You only do the ones that apply. But for the arrears section, that would be here. And the arrears payment that is currently, again, we'd put whatever it is, just like all the others. We're putting what the current payment is. We'll say $50 per month. And then, just like with that maintenance section, you can either say, I want the court to figure out what is a fair number, and you would put that here and then propose a start date. Or, if you prefer, if you have a set amount in mind, then you could not do this one and do number 2 and say sort of what you're proposing that number be. And keep in mind that this arrears payment is not talking about the arrears balances. So it's not talking about how much John owes Jane in total. It's just talking about how much he pays per month to try and get that paid off. All right, so that would go like that. And so then some notices, of course, there. The very last one is F. F is other changes. So I mentioned before, if you wanted to change child support, if we also wanted Jane to pay child support, we could do that here. And you probably don't have enough space on this line. You might have to do an attachment. We could say, mother to pay father, $150 per month in child support. Beginning, all right, you can't quite finish it off. Beginning, and then you'd put the date you want it to start. And so you're basically just following the same format here, and you could also talk about, is it going to include a deviation? But that would probably be on a C attached. And you can just do like a Word document, C attachment, saying what it is you want to do with that. And so if you are having to do a C attached for that section, you would go ahead, if I'm doing a brand new Word document, you put a little mini caption at the top. With the names and the case number. And then you'll just draw a little line across the bottom. I'm using the underscore to do that. So it has a little automatic line there, and then you would just say F, other changes, continued, and then here's where you can say anything you're going to say. So, mother to pay father, I think I said 150, we'll do that dollars, $150 per month in child support beginning April 1st of 2020, or whatever it is you're wanting to do with that other change. But that's just kind of an example if you're using that other changes section. Or maybe if you want to talk about taxes, you could say father to claim child in even tax years, or whatever it is you're wanting to do. So that would kind of be that other changes section. Oh, I'm not going to save that. So then back here, if you're not doing other changes, you can skip that. And then at the very bottom of this page, you can see it's asking for the date of the last court order. I'm going to talk about that in an upcoming video, but just a little bit of a preview for what's coming up next. All right, well, that's all here at the MJC. Thanks again for listening today. I hope that this was helpful. And now go out and represent yourselves well.